The data set had several limitations, including the fact that it was a snapshot of one day. It did not contain information about youth disposition to camps, and it did not contain contextual information like the LA Detention Screener Risk Assessment Score that would have helped us develop a deeper understanding of the youth detained at the halls. However, even with those limitations, we believe that the data set contains useful information to help us begin to develop a profile of the youth in probation's juvenile halls. There were 342 youth detained in the halls on July 27th. Of those 342 youth, 62 were SYTF youth. So we've excluded those youth in our report to focus on the remaining 280 youth who make up the juvenile hall population. One of the most profound observations from the data set was the extent to which Black and Latino youth are overrepresented in the juvenile hall population and disproportionately impacted by the juvenile justice system. This issue is especially acute for Black youth. According to census data, African Americans compose 9% of LA County's total population, which includes all age groups. Furthermore, according to data from kidsdata.org, Black youth make up about 7% of the county's total child population. However, based on the data set we received from probation, Black youth account for 37% of the juvenile hall population, which is about 5 times their population in community. In contrast, white and Asian populations in the county of Los Angeles both outnumber that of African Americans. Again, referencing data from kidsdata.org, white youth account for 20% of the county's youth population, yet they only represent 4% of the detained youth in our halls. And to be clear, we are not advocating for the incarceration of one group over another. However, what the data set reveals is that our local juvenile justice system, which includes other stakeholders beyond the probation department, creates severe racial disparities that disproportionately impact and harm our local African American community. It's also worth mentioning that scholars from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte have noted that no study to date has found that youth of color commit more serious crimes at rates that would explain their overrepresentation in the juvenile justice system. The data set from probation contained zip codes of where the youth resided prior to being detained. The most common areas where they live are South Los Angeles, which is the city of Los Angeles, Southeast Los Angeles County, which is a cluster of small cities such as Southgate, Bell, Downey, and others, and the Antelope Valley, which encompasses both cities and unincorporated areas, including Leona Valley, Lake Los Angeles, Lancaster, and Palmdale, to name a few. To better understand the socio makeup of these areas, we use the University of Southern California's Neighborhood Data for Social Change portal to allow us to compare these regions to countywide benchmark data. And based on this comparison, we see that these communities have high concentrations of Latino and African American residents. They have above average concentrations of poverty. For example, the median income in these communities falls well below the average income for LA County, and they have higher than average unemployment rates. As many researchers have observed, poverty is a key factor that contributes to justice system involvement. And although incarceration touches all communities across the county of Los Angeles, the impact is most profound in the 2nd Supervisorial District, and namely in South Los Angeles. Scholars at USC have noted that the South LA region has been saddled with decades of discriminatory policing, a worsening affordable housing crisis, and economic inequality that has continued to suppress the community. The Annie E. Casey Foundation has reported that the national average length of stay for pre-adjudicated youth is about 27 days. We calculated the day between the youth's intake day and the date with which we received the data to try and estimate the average length of stay for LA County youth. And our best guess is a median of 87 days and an average of 5 months. This is important because research from the National Bureau of Economic Research reports that pretrial juvenile detention increases a young person's likelihood of felony recidivism by 33% within 1 year. Their research also reports a 31% decline in the likelihood of graduating high school, thereby significantly impacting or reducing the youth's future earning potential. The longer a youth is detained, the more prone they are to suffering substantial long-term harm that has lasting and negative impacts to their mental health and their long-term economic stability. So, in summary, the data revealed that an overwhelming majority of detained youth are Latino and African American. In fact, 94% of the youth within this data set were either Latino or African American. And they come from communities, that have struggled with economic inequality. And although this is a countywide problem, it is most acute in South Los Angeles. The pre-adjudicated youth or pretrial youth are detained for substantially long periods of time in which their rehabilitative, academic, and prosocial needs are not being adequately met, as has been reported frequently in reports from the POC in our inspection reports and publications from the Office of Inspector General, also known as the OIG. Within this data set, 86% of the youth who were detained had a case pending disposition status. The data shows that it's kids from struggling communities who are being detained. And public reports from the Department of Mental Health have shared that our youth who are detained have a high probability of suffering from mental illness and child welfare involvement. These are the youth who are detained in our halls. Furthermore, research shows that given the many harms that youth incarceration causes, there is actually little to no evidence to show that detaining youth makes communities safer. And some of those harms include the development of negative self-identity, exposure to unsafe environments, the worsening of pre-existing mental health challenges, and the trauma of being separated from family and community. And so, in closing, we know that the Board of Supervisors have spearheaded a number of initiatives to address racial inequity in the county and to transform our juvenile justice system. We urge the Probation Department, as well as other agencies in our local juvenile justice system, to mitigate implicit bias in policing, increase the use of diversion to reduce disparities and reduce reliance on youth incarceration, decarcerate the halls to reduce the number of youth who are unnecessarily exposed to the harms of the current system, and to continue investing in community-based preventative measures in historically underserved communities to address the underlying problems that increase the likelihood of justice system involvement. Our report will be released soon, and our second report will explore the alleged charges of the youth detained, and we will offer additional recommendations.